I'm saying this as a man whose kids are grown. Not grown in the way you imagine, grown in the sense that they no longer need me to show up. And I don't get to go back. I'm not here to give advice. I'm not here to tell you what to do with your life. I'm not even sure anyone should be listening to me. But I am saying this from a place you don't see coming when you're younger. A place where time doesn't feel abstract anymore, where the past isn't something you can fix with effort or intention. I didn't abandon my kids. I never walked out. I never disappeared. I paid the bills. I showed up to the important things. I did what I thought a father was supposed to do. And that's the part that still messes with me. Because when people talk about absent fathers, they imagine someone irresponsible, someone careless, someone who didn't try. That wasn't me. I was there in all the ways that could be measured and missing in all the ways that couldn't. I didn't know that at the time. No one tells you this while you're in it. They tell you you're doing the right thing. They reward you for it. They call you reliable, responsible, a good provider. And you believe them. I believed them. What I didn't understand, what I couldn't see while it was happening, is that presence isn't something you make up for later. It's not a debt you can repay when life slows down. It's not something your kids wait around for. It either happens or it doesn't. And by the time you realize which one it was, the moment has already passed. I'm not angry. I'm not dramatic about it. I don't even feel cheated. I just live with the fact that there are versions of my kids' lives that happened without me in them. Quietly, normally, without any big moment where I could have noticed. And that's why I'm talking now. Not because I figured something out early, but because I figured it out too late. This isn't a lesson, it's a confession. I didn't abandon my kids. I just wasn't there when it mattered. I believed I was a good father. Not because I told myself that, but because everything around me confirmed it. I went to work every day. I stayed late. I said yes when it mattered professionally. I said no when it came to rest. And nobody questioned it. In fact, people praised it. They called me dependable. They said my kids were lucky. They told me I was doing the right thing. That's how the lie works. It doesn't sound like a lie. It sounds like responsibility. You grow up hearing it without realizing you're being trained. A man provides. A man shows up for work. A man sacrifices now so his family can be comfortable later. So you do exactly that. You don't think of it as choosing work over your kids. You think of it as choosing your kids through work. And society rewards you for that choice. You get raises. You get respect. You get the quiet approval of everyone who sees the results, not the cost. No one pulls you aside and asks how many dinners you've missed. No one asks if your kids stopped talking to you in the car. No one asks if they've learned to stop waiting. They just see the house, the stability, the schedule that's always full. And you start to believe that providing is the same as being present. I did. I believed that love could be expressed through effort, that care could be measured in hours worked, that sacrifice automatically translated into connection. It felt logical. It felt mature. It felt like the responsible thing to do. And here's the dangerous part. The lie doesn't hurt right away. Nothing breaks. No one complains. Your kids don't sit you down and tell you you're failing them. They adapt. They fill in the gaps themselves. They stop asking questions you're too tired to answer. They learn not to interrupt. They learn what parts of you are available and which ones aren't. And you don't notice because on paper, everything looks fine. That's how I missed it. Not because I didn't care, not because I was selfish, but because I trusted a definition of fatherhood that never included my absence. Nobody ever told me this was the trade. Nobody said that in exchange for being a good provider, I was slowly teaching my kids how to live without me. And by the time I understood that, the deal had already been made. I told myself the same thing over and over again. Just a few more years. Not forever. Not like this would be my life permanently. Just until things settled down. Just until the workload eased. Just until the promotion went through. Just until the pressure lifted. I wasn't abandoning anything. I was postponing. That's how I justified it. When things calm down, I'll be more present. When the kids are older, they'll understand. When we're more secure, I'll have room to breathe. It sounded reasonable. It sounded temporary. It sounded like a plan. And that's the dangerous part. Because it was a plan. A quiet one. One that didn't feel reckless or cruel. It felt responsible. I honestly believed I was doing this for them. I wasn't choosing work because I loved it more than my family. I was choosing work because I believed it protected them. Because I believed stability mattered more than availability. Because I believed presence could wait. No one ever challenged that belief. Not my boss, not my colleagues, not my friends, not even my family. When people asked how I was doing, I said, busy, and they nodded like that explained everything. Busy meant productive. Busy meant necessary. Busy meant you were doing something right. So, I stayed busy. And every time I felt a flicker of doubt, every time I noticed how quiet the house felt or how quickly conversations ended, I told myself the same thing. This isn't forever. This is just a season. I didn't realize that seasons don't announce when they end. I thought time was something I could borrow from my kids. I thought I could take a little now and give a lot back later. I thought they would wait for me to show up fully. I thought understanding would come automatically with age. I didn't think of time as something that could run out between us. Because nothing dramatic was happening. There were no fights, no ultimatums, no slammed doors. They didn't accuse me of being absent. They didn't ask why I was always tired. They didn't demand more of me. And because they didn't ask, I assumed they were fine. That assumption became another quiet lie I lived inside. I told myself they were resilient, that kids don't need constant attention, that what mattered was consistency, not closeness. I told myself that when they were older, they'd look back and appreciate what I did, that they'd understand the sacrifices, that they'd see the bigger picture. I didn't realize they were forming a picture of me in real time. A version of me who was always halfway there. A version of me who listened with one ear. A version of me who was physically present, but mentally somewhere else. I didn't intend that version to become permanent. I thought it was temporary. That's the thing about the deal I made with myself. I believed every word of it. I wasn't lying to anyone else. I was lying to myself. I believed love could be deferred, that connection could be postponed without consequence, that relationships had some kind of internal savings account where effort earned now could be redeemed later. I didn't know that time doesn't work that way. I didn't know that moments don't accumulate interest. Every not now felt small in isolation. Every missed dinner felt justified. Every late night felt necessary. One by one, they didn't look like choices. They looked like obligations. And that's how the deal survived. I never woke up and said, "Today I'll be less present." I never decided to miss something important on purpose. I just kept saying yes to one thing and no to another until the pattern became invisible. When people talk about neglect, they imagine neglect as cruelty, as anger, as absence with intent. This wasn't that. This was absence by accumulation. 1,000 small decisions that all made sense on their own. 1,000 justifications that never sounded wrong. And because nothing broke immediately, I assumed nothing was breaking at all. I remember telling myself, they're young, they won't remember this. As if memory was the problem. What I didn't understand was that it wasn't about what they would remember. It was about what they were learning. They were learning what access to me looked like. They were learning how much space they were allowed to take up in my life. They were learning what kind of man I was available to be. And I was teaching them without realizing I was teaching anything. That's the part that still gets to me. Because if someone had told me, clearly, directly, that this was the trade, I don't know if I would have made it. If someone had said, you can have this career, this stability, this respect, but it will cost you a kind of closeness you won't be able to recreate later, I might have hesitated. But nobody says it that way. They say, you're doing what you have to do. They say, you're being a good father. They say, your family is lucky to have you. So, you keep going. You keep believing that the important stuff can wait, that love is patient, that time is flexible. I didn't see that every year I told myself just a little longer, I was quietly making that version of me more permanent. The man who was always tired, always preoccupied, always planning to show up later. Later became the place I put everything that mattered. And later never arrived. Not all at once, not dramatically. It just kept moving. I thought time was something I could borrow from my kids. I didn't realize it was something they were giving me, and that once it was gone, it wasn't mine to reclaim. By the time I started to sense that something was off, nothing felt urgent enough to force a change. Life still worked. The house was still standing. The schedule was still full. From the outside, the deal looked like it was paying off. From the inside, something was quietly slipping away, and I didn't yet have the language to name it. So, I kept telling myself the same thing. Just a few more years. Just until things calm down. They'll understand later. And I truly believed that. That's what makes this part hard to talk about. Not because I was wrong, but because I was so sure I was right.
There wasn't a fight. There wasn't a moment where everything blew up. No slammed doors, no accusations. That's what made it easy to miss. At some point, they just stopped asking. They stopped asking what time I'd be home, stopped asking if I could help with something, stopped asking if I wanted to come. At first, it felt like relief. Less pressure, less guilt, fewer decisions. I told myself it meant they were growing up, becoming independent, learning to handle things on their own. And maybe part of that was true, but that wasn't the whole truth. Kids don't rebel first. They adapt. Before they ever get angry, they adjust their expectations. Before they ever accuse you, they quietly rewrite the rules. They learn what gets a response. They learn what doesn't. They learn which parts of themselves are welcome and which ones aren't worth bringing to you. I didn't notice it right away because it didn't feel like loss. It felt like efficiency. No more reminders, no more disappointed looks, no more having to explain why I couldn't make it. They made it easier for me, and I let them. I remember a night when I came home later than usual. The house was quiet. Everyone had already eaten. There was a plate in the fridge, covered, labeled. Not angry, not passive-aggressive,
just prepared. That's when I realized something had shifted. They weren't waiting anymore. They weren't asking because they'd learned the answer. They weren't upset because they'd learned how to adjust. They weren't hurt in a way that needed to be expressed. They'd simply moved on. And the worst part is, I mistook that for maturity. I thought they're doing fine without me. I thought this is what growing up looks like. I didn't see that growing up had started to include growing away. When kids are little, they ask loudly. They need you loudly. They pull at you. They demand space in your life. When that doesn't work, they try something else. They get quieter. They stop asking questions that don't get answered. They stop inviting someone who always says, "Not tonight." They stop expecting presence from someone who's rarely available. Not out of resentment, out of learning. That's the part no one warns you about. They don't tell you that silence isn't peace, it's adjustment. I thought things were calmer. I thought the household had found its rhythm. What it had really found was a way to function without me at the center of it. There were fewer interruptions, fewer conflicts, fewer needs that required my attention. And I took that as proof that everything was fine. I didn't see that I was being slowly edited out of the small, ordinary moments, the stories that didn't get told, the questions that didn't get asked, the thoughts that didn't get shared. Those moments don't announce themselves. They just stop happening. They didn't need me less. They just learned not to. And once a child learns how to live without your presence, they don't suddenly unlearn it later. That adjustment becomes normal. I still showed up for the big things, the obvious things, the things you put on a calendar. But life isn't lived in the obvious moments. It's lived in the in-between, in the car rides, in the unplanned conversations, in the moments when nothing important is supposed to happen. Those are the moments that disappeared first. And because nothing went wrong, I told myself nothing was wrong. That's how this kind of distance forms, not through conflict, through accommodation. They adapted to my absence so well that I didn't realize how absent I'd become. By the time I noticed, they weren't asking anymore, and I didn't know how to ask my way back in. I used to think that if you asked my kids about me, they'd describe the man I believed I was: hardworking, reliable, tired maybe, but present when it counted. That's the version of myself I carried in my head. The problem is, that's not the version they grew up with. They didn't grow up with my intentions. They didn't grow up with my explanations. They grew up with my patterns. With how I walked into a room, with how quickly I checked the time, with how often I said, "Not now." That's the version that stays. I didn't realize this until much later because children don't give you feedback in the way adults do. They don't sit you down and explain how they experience you. They just react. And one day I noticed a reaction that didn't match the story I was telling myself. It was small. So small I almost missed it. Someone asked my son a question. Nothing important, just casual. And he answered it himself. Not because I wasn't there physically, I was standing right next to him. He didn't look at me first, didn't wait, didn't check. He just answered. It wasn't disrespect. It wasn't defiance. It was instinct. That's when it hit me. He wasn't used to me being part of the exchange. In my head, I was the father. In his reflexes, I was optional. I went home that day thinking about all the moments that must have trained that response. All the times I was distracted. All the times I half listened. All the times my presence was conditional. I remembered how I'd come home tired and quiet, how conversations ended quickly, how questions turned into statements because there was no room for dialogue. I remembered how often my kids adjusted to me instead of the other way around, and I understood something uncomfortable. I wasn't a bad father. I didn't yell, I didn't disappear, I didn't cause chaos, but I wasn't really there. I was predictable, consistently unavailable in small ways, and consistency teaches more than intention ever could. They learned who I was through repetition, not promises, through tone, not effort, through what happened when nothing special was going on. That's the version of me they grew up with, not the one who loved them deeply, the one who was always slightly elsewhere. I used to comfort myself by thinking, they know I care. But knowing someone cares and feeling someone's presence are not the same thing. Care can exist at a distance. Presence can't. They didn't grow up missing a dramatic version of me. They missed a quiet one. The one who lingered. The one who noticed. The one who stayed in the moment without checking out. And because nothing ever exploded, I didn't see it as damage. I saw it as normal. That's the illusion. You think absence has to look like neglect to count. You think harm has to be loud. But this kind of absence doesn't leave scars you can point to. It leaves gaps. Gaps in memory, gaps in closeness, gaps where a relationship could have deepened and didn't. When I think about how my kids see me now, I don't imagine resentment. I imagine distance that feels ordinary to them. That's what scares me. Not anger, not blame. Familiar distance. I wasn't a bad father. I just wasn't really there. And that difference is much bigger than I ever understood while it was happening.
It didn't happen during a crisis. There was no argument, no confrontation, no breaking point that forced everything into the open. That's what makes this harder to explain. The moment I'm talking about was ordinary. So ordinary that if you weren't paying attention, you'd miss it completely. We were all in the same place, same room, same table. Nothing emotional was happening. No tension, no distance you could point to. And yet, I felt it. Not like a realization, more like a recognition. I was there, but not in it. The conversation was moving around me instead of through me. Jokes landed without waiting for my reaction. Decisions were made without looking in my direction. Not intentionally, not dismissively, naturally. And that's when it became clear. I wasn't being excluded. I was being accommodated. They weren't pushing me out. They'd already adjusted to me not being central. I remember thinking, this is my family, and then realizing that the way they experienced family no longer required my full presence. That thought didn't come with panic. It came with a strange calm, because suddenly everything made sense. All the quiet, all the independence, all the moments I thought meant I was doing something right. Understanding didn't change anything. It just made everything clearer. I saw the pattern at once, not as guilt, not as blame, as fact. I had trained this dynamic over years without realizing I was teaching anything. I wanted to say something, not to apologize, not to explain, just to step back into the space I thought I occupied. But there wasn't a clean way to do that. You don't interrupt a system that's working for everyone else just because you've finally noticed it. You don't force yourself back into relevance. So I stayed quiet. And that's when I realized something else that no one prepares you for. Realizing the truth doesn't automatically give you a way to fix it. There was no speech that could undo the years, no gesture that would suddenly rewire habits that had formed naturally. They weren't waiting for an apology. They weren't holding a grudge. They were simply living in a structure that no longer depended on me.
And that's a harder thing to accept than anger, because anger gives you something to respond to. Distance just exists. I thought recognition would feel like relief, like clarity would open a door. Instead, it closed one. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And you also can't pretend that wanting things to be different makes them so. I didn't rush in with change. I didn't suddenly become present in a way that felt natural or welcome. That's the part people don't like to hear. Understanding doesn't come with momentum. It comes with stillness, with the awareness that some things can't be rushed back into place without doing more harm. I was finally awake, and waking up didn't put me back where I thought I was. It just showed me where I stood, slightly outside, not rejected, not resented, just not essential. I didn't lose my family that day. I realized I wasn't at the center of it, and there's no dramatic way to process that. No soundtrack, no closure, just the quiet understanding that being late to awareness is different from never having it at all, and that awareness doesn't repair the distance, it only makes it visible. What you're left with isn't a list. Not really. It's not a timeline you can point to and say, that's where it went wrong. It's quieter than that. What you're left with are absences that never announced themselves. Conversations that never happened because there didn't seem to be a reason to start them. Evenings that passed without incident because everyone was tired and functional and fine. Moments that felt too small to protect, so they slipped through unnoticed. Nothing dramatic was missing, and that's why I didn't notice. There was no single memory I could grab onto and say, this is the one I lost. There were just gaps. Gaps where a question could have been asked. Gaps where a thought could have been shared. Gaps where I could have lingered instead of moving on. At the time, those gaps felt insignificant. They didn't feel like losses. They felt like efficiency. Dinner was shorter. Conversations were simpler. Everyone seemed capable, and I mistook that for health. I didn't sit awake at night thinking about the days I worked late. Those felt justified. What stayed with me were the things that never rose to the level of importance. The car rides where the radio stayed on because silence felt easier. The evenings when everyone went to their rooms early and I told myself it was normal. The questions that started forming and then stopped halfway through. Those don't register as regret at first. They show up later when you realize you don't know certain things about the people you love. Not the big things, the small ones. What they were thinking when they were quiet. What they were afraid of when they didn't ask for help. What they learned to carry on their own. I realized I knew the outline of their lives, but not the texture. I knew where they went. I didn't always know how they felt getting there. And you can't retroactively insert yourself into those moments. You can't go back and say, wait, I want to be there for that part. Because those parts only exist once. What hurts isn't the missed milestones. It's the missed continuity. The feeling that life kept happening in between the things I showed up for. And because nothing ever broke, I didn't treat those in-between moments as fragile. I thought they'd always be there. That if I slowed down later, they'd still be waiting. But moments don't wait. They pass quietly, and they don't leave evidence behind. That's what I'm left with. Not guilt that overwhelms me. Not shame that consumes me. Just the awareness of how much life fits into the spaces we don't think to protect. I don't look back and think, I should have done everything differently. I think, I didn't realize how much was happening when I thought nothing important was going on. Nothing dramatic was missing. And that's exactly why it took me so long to see what I'd lost. I don't know how my kids see me. I know how I hope they see me. I know the version of myself I carry in my head, but I don't actually know which one lives in them. And that uncertainty doesn't go away. It doesn't soften with time. It doesn't resolve itself just because you've become more aware. It's something I live with. I don't know if they'll ever see me the way I want them to. Not because they're unwilling, not because they're holding anything against me, but because relationships aren't rewritten by intention. They're shaped by history. I can show up now. I do. I listen more, I stay longer, I make room. But none of that reaches backward. It doesn't touch the years that already passed. It doesn't change the way absence felt when it was happening. And that's the part I've had to accept. There isn't a moment where everything evens out. There isn't a scene where understanding fixes what time quietly altered. There's just this, a relationship that exists as it is, not as I wish it had been. I don't talk about this because I'm looking for forgiveness. I don't say it to make anyone feel anything specific. I say it because this is what remains when nothing explodes, when no one leaves, when no one is cruel, when no one does anything that looks like failure. Some things don't break loudly, they just disappear. And you don't notice them leaving until you realize they aren't there anymore. That's where I am now. Not angry, not bitter, not hopeless, just aware. Aware that some forms of closeness only exist in the moment. And once that moment passes, it doesn't announce its absence. It just becomes history. This isn't a warning. It's not advice. It's simply the truth of how things turned out for me. I don't know if it could have been different. I only know what it is now. And this is something I live with.